Добрый день. Меня
Crooks.
зовут Зелинский Никита. Рад вас
I'm
здесь
Nikita Zelinsky. I'm very happy to see you all here.
расскажу про МТС и
I will speak about MTS experience and about the fraudsters. The fraudsters, we call them
брать кредиты,
telephone
последние
crooks,
деньги.
those who make people pay
А тут же, я так
through the
понимаю, в
nose,
основном
give out
люди
their
кидаться не
last money to
те люди,
them.
которые цифры любят.
But obviously there are some mathematicians hidden here who like work with numbers. We have lots of numbers and lots of words, but let's just imagine how much money do you think people send to these violators, to these
А там однозначное число, двузначное,
fraudsters? Millions, zillions? What about billions? Do you think they cheat on people for huge amounts of money? 18 billion rubles. A and B prognosis. That's how much money people transfer to the fraudsters' accounts. It's a great business. You make a couple of calls, fraudulent calls, send a couple of messages, and that's how much money. Do you think how many transactions will occur in 2024 versus 2023?
Это да, спасибо, что в нас верите.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks very much for putting trust in us. All right.
Относительно прошлого года. Ну, как думаете, это 100 тысяч, это 10 тысяч, это миллион?
100,000, 10,000, 100 million. How much can we expect? Dozens of millions. Well, people obviously use here the Soviet education. No, not dozens of millions, it's 1,200,000. But this situation cannot last forever. With artificial intelligence, we can eradicate that, and we try to eradicate that. We try to combat spam calls, spam phone calls. The MTS Protector, as we call it, is our product that protects you from spam calls. Sometimes it rejects annoying ads, but what's spam? I think this is exactly this. We protect your transactions if there is a leak of your data somewhere, if there's a data leakage, somebody is trying to steal money from you and take a loan on your name, you'll be informed. Last week we introduced the MTS safe phone call, the exactly same thing which will help your near and dear and yourself not to become the victims of the social engineers. There are plenty of schemes, fraudulent schemes of that kind, and let me explain how we use these models to eradicate such fraudulent actions and what it looks like for a customer. Well, for example, a customer receives a phone call, the first one, maybe the second one, from the fraudsters. Our model works so they pronounce the phrase that only the subscriber can hear. You can possibly be talking with fraudsters because we don't have any legal right to break this phone call, to terminate this, but at the current state, you can possibly be talking to a fraudster. And I think this will suffice. So I think that this number of 1,200,000 will go down. We'll see whether it really works. But how does our solution work? We have a very big batch part. We have an online model. We have a chart, the data, with a scoring model. For retail customers, we have a protector, and for corporate, we have a scoring platform. The big banks are concerned that their customers are not becoming victims of social engineers. They also order the signal online that their customer is being cheated on. And this online track is the transcription of the voice, and it is sent in a model. So the model processes everything that they receive from the conversation, and the embeddings, the score triggers, are used here.
Вы разговариваете с мошенником.
You can possibly be talking with a fraudster. That's the phrase that we use to alarm people. I would like to say a few words about the scoring platform, how MTS is all about security. We have two branches on the same platform. One part is for the B2B customers. They order scores for risks. Marketplaces order scores for fraud. Now the social engineers victims are ordering this, and we sell it to marketplaces, to the banks, to insurance companies, so that they protect their customers. But we protect our retail people. These are the services that are showed in the very beginning. They are combined in the MTS Protector package, which is a part of the MTS premium subscription. What it looks like from inside, we have the Flink-based online part, which calculates and measures online features in the online model, and it's sent to the hot storage, where we can send the information there in milliseconds. And separately, we have very heavy batch models. Some of them are table-based, and some of them are graph neural networks, of which you are familiar with. Shall we skip a couple of slides with the familiar information to you? No? What does multi-targeted graphic neural network architecture looks like? We have a heterogeneous graph with the features of subscribers of the different nature, of the different size. We have features of ribs, so to speak, or edges. And these features are going through a couple of graphs convolutions and learn for a few targets. For example, this is about identifying the probability of default for different products, like default for point of service, credit card default, or loan default. And the one before last, I'll use this laser pointer. The one before last is the embedding layer. It's the concentrated information about the features. In the previous presentation, by the way, the guys were mentioning the embedding, and sometimes it happens not only in the language model, it happens in the graph model as well. It's the graph embedding, which has concentrated information with the hundreds of features and the interaction between the tops of the graph. We can validate, and we like to validate what we do with the external force, like open source solutions. To build an automatic graphic neural networks was done in CoolGraph. We have it on GitHub, and we have a link to it. You can launch it very quickly. For example, you don't know what to start with, but there are plenty of convolutions. How to make up the losses if you don't have the targets at each particular peak of the graph. So in order to reduce the entry level to the graph networks, for example, binary classifications, we have published the open source library here. What makes it look different from other similar ones is that we support heterogeneous graphs with the peaks shown in different ways, like, for example, subscriber, non-subscriber. All of the experiments have automatically been tracked in ML4. We select a few hundreds of ways of architecture, and inside we have different
не так часто используются, не так широко известны.
Different stimulation, stimulus,
трюки для ускорения обучения.
Different tricks and perks
Ну, короче, если столкнетесь
other things. So if you ever face it with a binary and multi-class classification,
если у нас вдруг что-то не
try
работает,
it. Try to put an issue if it's not working, make an asterisk if it's not working, and send it to us. And here's a link to you. Use this QR, at least to give it a try.
Собственно, в докладе там что-то было
In the presentation,
помню, или в тезисах про LLM, YouTube и антифрод, потому что мы все-таки, да, про то,
there
как
was
бороться с жертвами соцсетей.
anti-fraud and how to
Не с жертвами,
eradicate
просто
the,
мошенники.
how to eradicate the social engineers
Рассказывал, оно такое там
and help the
бочковое,
victims.
личное. Оно позволяет снижать нагрузку.
This thing helps us reduce the load on our infrastructure because we don't need to process all of the calls. Because if it's a phone call between the people who normally talk to each other, it will have a lower score. But if you make a language model,
как мы вообще обращаемся.
and separately I will actually explain how we treat the data and how do we match the legislation requirements. There's always a question, what do you start with?
Разметить вот этих вот мошенников.
How do we make data annotation? How do we segregate the fraudsters? We cannot eavesdrop, we cannot read
За что
or
нас
listen,
могут посадить, если мы...
because we can be punished and will be put to jail and then prison for eavesdropping. No, all of those things are done automatically. There are plenty of video bloggers who actually record their conversations with the fraudsters, and normally they cut the end, but that was an interesting example. The phone calls from the call centers where we did receive the permission from the users to use this data is another story. And from that, we also, by the way, do you know how many models are there? 100 million open source LLM models, 500,000. And each of them has parameters and quantization, the number of the parameters and the temperature. And you can play with that simultaneously. And you can send summarizations of the YouTube conversations there and try to generate your own conversation. So we've generated quite a big selection. We made annotations there. We marked phone calls for the banks, the so-called fraudsters masquerading as banks. And some people masquerade as they work in police. We'll consider such cases as well. So we did a pilot, and we piloted it with 10,000 subscribers. And by the way, I would like to find out how many data scientists are here in the audience. Which metrics do you think we need to optimize here? Some people need to optimize the number of calls. We need to optimize recall, ranking. Any other? Any other ideas? Any F measure? Well, logically, you're thinking correctly. They are right answers, but we did it in a different way. We optimized precision, just the other way around. And let me explain why. Because there were plenty of worries about our assumptions being too conservative. We block way too many things. So it was important for us to prove that we can block the fraudster. Maybe we not catch all of them. Maybe we skip some of them. But if we say you are possibly talking to a fraudster, we warned the user, so intuitively it looks like ranking or recall. The actual fact we were more targeted at precision. For those non-data scientists of you, I can explain the difference of the recall and precision. you have a flow of users. So the more fraudsters from the floor are called fraudsters, the higher the recall.
Чем вы жертвуете? Вы жертвуете
What you're giving out? You're giving out the mistakes of the following kind. You say, you may call this person a fraudster, but in actual fact, he is not. By maximizing recall, you announce way too many honest people as fraudsters. Precision is about a different thing. From those people you call the fraudsters, how many real fraudsters are there? So if you point a finger, you think it's okay. So that's what makes the difference. And so far, while we are in the very beginning and we are growing the pilot group, we are maximizing the precision. So in order to protect as many people as possible, you need to take the number of calls and recall. F measure combines two parameters, but it's just the question of whether precision or recall gets more weight. The MTS company speaks about phone calls and publications on the internet, but immediately people start complaining about the big brother watching you. You, the MTS company, they say, are watching us, you're tracking us. There are people listening to all of our conversation through headphones, like in that famous or notorious picture. But it's not true. We take the consent of the MTS protector for this secure phone call. You will not engage that by random fashion. You cannot engage it randomly. We analyze this data only in the secure MTS environment without any third party getting access there. If only we could do it differently, we would not be making it difficult with LLMs. We can only launch a script, ask it to measure the metrics, but we never see the primary input. Here is the third part, the legal experts wanted me to insert with the conclusive actions. So there should be a number of attempts of people actually wanting to connect this particular service. Like, for example, they would like to call a call center and find out how to do that. I promised you not too many words, and we've reached the inside part. We are a mobile provider. We are on the edge of fighting phone crooks. Seems like the telephone fraud is no longer introduced as the security service of a certain bank. It's more like, hello, Ivan, your SIM card is getting expired tomorrow, they say. You need to extend it. And that's the top scenario of fraud these days. But we're not going to write it down. Maybe the fraudsters will see this presentation and change this scenario. I'm almost done. I'm just showing my contacts here to contact me later. I'm responsible for data science function, but I will be delighted to help you, whatever you write me there. Thank you very much for your presentation. A round of applause to the speaker. My friends, please use this opportunity, use the chat to write questions, but there are not too many questions there yet. We may want to listen a couple of questions from the floor, but this question is, hello, Mr. Ivanov. You're being called from a security service of a bank. So jokes aside, we obviously see that there are people here who would like to ask questions. Yes, hello. Are you still testing it, or it's already operational? We tested that last week with 10,000 subscribers. Most of them work for MTS. And they agreed to participate in this adventure. From Q3, we'll cover more than 1/3 of a customer
Конечно,
base.
конечно, я бы здесь не выступал. Ну, прям, нет, там
Спасибо.
все ровно.
Thank you for your answer.
Который там
Я больше скажу, я в МТС уже не работал, если бы не получилось.
I would not have worked for MTS. And by the way, how much money did you save to the users, or
Блин, я чё-то
it's a
задался
secret?
вопросом.
Ну, мне
Ты-
кажется,
ты-
I actually never asked myself this question. Seems like it's a good business model.
из чата, из бота нашего.
Here is a question from our chat.
Потому что, зная
Were there
описание архитектуры модели,
problems with the
попробовать
security of the model?
безопасным,
Because
и тогда уже будет false,
the vector may get close to
и я останусь без наследства.
the safe one and it may false.
Говорим про black-box атаки, да,
And
то есть когда нету ни доступа ни к весам модели,
fraudulent operation may become a success.
ни к чему.
There is no access to the train of the
Вообще
model, for
происходит,
instance.
да.
How do these incidents occur?
Adversarial атаки на нейронные сети.
How do these attacks on neural networks occur? We use the anti-gradient,
Сэмплов, которые продаем
not
на
of weights by samples that we
Для этого
feed.
надо, ну, получать достаточно часто
For
ответ.
this, you will get the answers quite frequently.
Сильно быстро сходятся.
In adversarial attacks, the gradients do not match quite quickly. So there is no such opportunity. Somebody should
Примерно одинаково
call each and every time,
детектить, в какой
tell the
момент
same story,
он
tell the
нащупает
same
этот adversarial
fraudulent
sample,
story.
когда мы прекратим срабатывать. То есть он
So
должен быть
before we
который, значит, слушает эту штуку,
feel this adversary example,
будет ему вот так названивать, и
there should be an
ну,
accomplice
это достаточно тяжело такое
who
провернуть. У
should
нас
be
есть
changing it a little bit.
такой
It's
кейс
the
в сети,
difficult thing to do.
заметит.
We have a non-standard
Вопрос
behavior
классный,
here.
правильно. Ну, еще,
I like your question, yes, but
500,000
we have
моделек уже. Ну, там русскоязычных.
500,000 models,
Мы
not too many Russian
используем
ones,
нейронку.
but we are not using one single neural network. We are using different
То есть мы используем несколько эмбеддингов от разных
embeddings
и поверх
from
этого
different
используем
language models. And on top of that,
еще используем
we do the
скорее
boosting
графовый
and we use the graph embeddings,
презентацию. Вот, то есть это такой
like I showed you in the
объединение
presentation.
нескольких моделей.
It's the calibration of a few models of graph embeddings of the language models.
Тяжело будет.
I think it's going to be a hard thing to do.
Хочу сказать, что я являюсь пользователем защитника.
I'm actually a user of the protector, and I don't have any false positives. I have a positive experience. So here is an example. All of these scoring models are nice and clear, but how do you complete this model with the numbers of the phones, phone numbers of the fraudsters? How do you fill it up? Which sources do you take
Исходную разметку,
to fill up this database?
которые приходят и говорят, научитесь.
First of all, it's the banks that we use. They say,
Ну, вы знаете,
please
в законодательстве
learn
много
to
инициатив. А давайте банк
protect
штрафовать.
our
Клиента
customers.
развели,
Some people say, let's just
банк
impose a
что
fine
сволочь, такая кредит-то выдал. Явно же человека разводили.
on a bank
Да, банки там ну, после
for
соответствующих
missing
процедур такие.
that fraudulent activity. So
И это скорее даже не season, не номер телефона.
it's not just a
дата, время.
number of the phone, it's the time.
У нас в онлайне еще есть
Да,
вопросы?
конечно. Первый вопрос. Используете ли вы голосовые и звуковые признаки?
Do you use voice
В принципе, как их вычленить?
attributes in the model, and how do you single them
Не
out?
позорно, пока нет. Пока нет.
It's a shame to say no, but so far we have not used them.
Пока что руки не
Is there
Ну,
an objective reason
делать будешь или в
to
бэклоге?
not use them?
Мы пока в бэклоге, ребят. Вот. Ну,
So far, so good. We have put it in a backlog, but
добавку и инфраструктуру
if we can see that
естественной нагрузки.
it gives a good addition in the tests, we will add this as well.
Используете именно графовые нейронные сети для классификации, а почему
Why do you use the graph neural networks,
градиентный бустинг?
but not just simple gradient boosting?
Отдельная история. Как живет,
Well, it's a long story.
живет скоринговая платформа, да? Скоринговая
This scoring platform, what is it surrounded by?
при этом рынке с короткой.
It lives in a highly competitive scoring market. The banks buy scores,
На каждого
predictions
единицу времени
for each particular subscriber
не
and
даст там, и так далее. Ну, на какой-то заданный
in their chances of paying off the loan or not.
Такой
How do they select them? They run
Проходим
a
примерно
contest.
250-300 таких конкурсов.
We have approximately 250-300 contests per year like that.
Вроде one-фактора. Да, вот мы отдаем скоры, и банки тестят, какие скоры.
We give the scores and the banks test which scores give the maximum addition to the models.
Докрутили графовые нейронки.
When we added the graph neural networks, we started winning twice as much in such contests, and we doubled the revenue on our scoring platform by making our platforms and models stronger, better, more powerful. It's actually a good addition to the quality of the
Так, ну, слушай, это звучит отлично.
prediction model.
Идем к следующему вопросу.
Well, it sounds great,
Подразумевается ли дальнейшее взаимодействие
but are you hoping to interact with the law enforcement bodies, with the banks
какую-то еще информацию об исторических...
whose customers are being attacked?
Ну, как ты
Maybe you'll send them the information about
работает?
previous calls and how do you enrich their database.
В рамках той
Well, it's more technical conference. So far, so good. I should say that we work with all of the regulators and we comply with the legislation completely.
как именно взаимодействовать.
But I don't have any details on how do we interact with the Ministry of Interior or the Central Bank of Russia.
Есть вопросы или ищем? Друзья, может быть, из зала есть вопросы? Да, вижу вас.
A couple of questions from the floor, I think, final ones. Yes, thank you. I joined this presentation not in the very beginning, but maybe you mentioned that. Before you selected the system, did you measure the value? Did you measure the business
Смотрите, мы не можем это...
KPIs?
То есть тут как
We cannot
вариант.
but do
Мы
it.
не закупали,
We
не
do it,
продали. То есть мы делаем
of
на
course.
наших технологиях, на open source технологиях.
We use our technology, the open source technology. We do not just simply borrow it from open source, but we give our libraries to open source. One ETL, for instance, QGraph.
Надо делать, и мы делаем, потому что мы не
We
можем
must do it, and we do it because we
игнорировать безопасность.
simply cannot ignore the issue of security of our subscribers.
Не то, что мы там
And we are not about earning
месяц. Наша цель,
and getting 150 million rubles a month profit, but the purpose here is to give security
Но
to our subscribers.
цифрами обоснован.
ответ.
It seems like it's paying off.
Торг был неуместен, и цифры, Стас, никто не требовал.
Nobody wanted any numbers economically from us, profit-wise. When we speak about security,
Предложение,
we do not bargain.
без
I think it's a great offer
Рано или поздно все операторы
from a safe operator.
делают. Да, ты не можешь этого не...
I think sooner or later, all of the mobile operators will have to do that.
Да, у нас есть вопрос
Safe.
онлайн.
We have a question online.
Фича, да, там, это...
Да.
Да, вот у девушки вопрос.
We have a question here.
с онлайна и
Окей.
Let's do this online question
Ребят,
about how did you collect the data set for learning.
разметку.
I explained that in a slide, in one of the slides.
Звонки колл-центра, как на Олике.
Data annotation, YouTube.
С помощью open source LLM.
We used the open source LLMs. We varied
Да,
LLMs. We varied the input data.
Почему вы считаете, что в данном контексте
Why do you think in this context the generation is suitable for a data set, however, it cannot always
большой data
reproduce the real behavior? Because ultimately, in the end of the 6-month-long pilot period, it all went quite well. Of course. We test them in a battlefield.
Спасибо за доклад. Подскажите, а с другими
Thank you. What about other operators? Do you interact with them?
может быть, обмениваетесь базами данных?
Maybe you exchange database
информации.
information
Да, да, да.
about fraudsters.
Мне такой...
I feel there's a hint, a catch there.
Потому что я...
I don't know, maybe I'm out of scope. I'm more for ML, the data science,
Процесс
but
передачи.
I'm not about
Не в курсе про...
sending the data. Unfortunately, I don't know how it's done. But you can write me if this question is relevant. I'll try to clarify it with our legal department.
Вообще, законно ли передавать записи
By the way, is it legal to
open source that
send the recordings of the conversations with the fraudsters? Is it legal?
но
We took them from the YouTube
есть
videos.
еще где-то вопрос был. Поднимите
I saw there was a question elsewhere.
Петь справа, справа.
справа.
It's here on the right.
Здравствуйте, вопрос схож с генерацией данных.
Hello, it's a similar question to the data generation. I would like to find out if we remove YouTube recordings, the voice recordings from train, if only leave the LLM generated data, how precise will it run the tests on the battlefield? Did you try that? We didn't try exactly that. We didn't test it like you described. Even the generation through LLMs was about putting it in the long chain. We launched the view shot prompt. We added few shots there, adjusted the temperature, so to speak, and LLM reacted to the recordings of the conversations with fraudsters.
Галлюцинации нейросетей, когда
Maybe you may remember some
способы обмана, которые
funny hallucinations created by neural networks. It generated itself that do not exist in real life. I didn't think about it, but it's a great opportunity to explore.
придумать новые системы.
Maybe we should come up with the new fraud systems and earn more through fraud than we earn from security. Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. What do you think? In the next couple of years, as LLM progresses and develops, will we have to change this from precision to recall, as there'll be more and more fraudulent conversations because the cost of generating such fraud talks goes down? It's a very serious question that you touched. These tasks very often arise in fraud eradication departments and compliance. So when we start talking about it, it's very difficult to select the metric. Apart from that,
можно попытаться еще, ну и обязательно такой голос раздастся, учесть стоимость.
you need to take into account the cost.
На 100 рублей. Ну, там ему смс пришла, что там...
For example, some people may be cheated on 100 rubles with the SMS.
Кейс для нас равноценен.
Is this case as valid as the case with the old grandmother sending her last couple of millions to a fraudster?
Сильный челлендж.
Can they be compared? It's very challenging to use the proper business metrics to take into account the amount of money, the social consequences, the legislative requirements and the requirements of the banks. I don't know. Maybe we'll consider a few metrics and we'll try to optimize a few metrics. Or we will focus on business segments so that the people of elderly people will have one set of metrics and we'll have recall elsewhere. I'm not sure yet.
В этом многомерном пространстве пытаться вот выбрать правильные и этически правильные, по законодательству правильные.
But we'll try and attempt and find proper metrics legally
мелких кейсов.
as well. Because if we find a lot of small cases, but we have huge leaks for big amounts of money, like 45 million rubles, it's not going to be the right distribution. Have you ever tried to hire the fraudsters, pay them money and use them instead of LLM so that they will generate new ways of cheating people, like use them as white hackers? Sounds like a good idea. We never thought of that. We've never thought of that. But where do we hunt them? We have not seen such profiles in LinkedIn, but if I ever stumble upon them, I'll tell you about that. It would be a very nice record on LinkedIn page, a white hacker. Do we have time? We have time and questions. How did you test that on the battlefield when you couldn't see the running time? We just showed those cases that the banks sent us. The bank sent us that was the person who was cheated on. And we said, okay, we warned him. We warned him.
Все-таки
Yet another question. Maybe, of course, fraudsters use Telegram, WhatsApp, and other messengers.
сложнее, но может есть какой-то
That's where it's more difficult to collect data, but maybe there is a way to control it and monitor it.
Здесь проблема.
VoIP, voice over IP, is much more difficult to monitor. Normally, however, the fraudsters use simple cellular phones to make phone calls. But you guys are very good with fresh ideas, both for us, security-wise, and for fraudsters. Please raise your hands. Who is going to call babushkas and extort money from them?
Еще есть вопросы в зале?
Maybe you have other questions.
Здрасте, спасибо за доклад.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. Here's a question.
Весь строится вокруг фразы там «вам звонят мошенники».
So it's like you are centering it around the phrase,
Там неделю назад, да,
a
какой-то
fraudster is possibly calling you.
фродеры, ну, прознают про
Maybe the fraudsters will learn about it.
будут звонки абонентам МТС,
Maybe they are,
начинаться с фразы «Здравствуйте, ваш оператор
the
МТС».
phrase is like that.
Слышит фразу
Here's your operator, MTS,
«Обратите внимание».
calling you to say that these are not fraudsters calling you. Please ignore it. Well, of course, the battle of sword and shield.
Да, мы будем пытаться что-то придумывать, там, разрывать разговор или еще что-то все-таки, когда будем все чуть больше, ну, там...
When we have such things, we need to be sure that we'll eradicate them when we have good grounds legally. I know that the fraudsters will find ways to evade that
уязвимости. Это социальная
and pass it around. It's more like social engineering.
И с этим, да, действительно.
It's the philosophy of trust, and it's very difficult to work with that. Fraudsters will be changing their patterns, and we'll be either ahead of them or we'll have to play catch up. I think we're in favor of being ahead and not play catch up.